Well, to start, DJ, pleasure to meet you, man. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Thanks for coming to check out Crispy Crypto. You've got a really interesting story. We were talking just a little bit about that before we just started. So I'd love to start the podcast with just giving some context on who you are and your journey through the space, and how we got here.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, my journey through the space is very interesting because it started actually well before crypto was invented. It started when I first discovered what money was back in 2008, when Ron Paul said, our monetary system is unfair, it transfers wealth from the poor and the middle class to the rich. And once I read about why he said that and what was going on, I was quite shocked. I couldn't believe it, that we have a central banking system that's been documented over and over and over again through history as a fraud, and yet we're using it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's suppressed that information is because they control the school system and so forth. But that's a whole other topic. But moving forward, after understanding what money is, I decided, okay, well, as a software developer, I needed to come up with a new solution because historically we see what happens when this monetary system fails, because it always fails because it's a scam. Like all scams, it ends badly. And when it ends, it usually ends with the worst of the worst people getting all the wealth, and all the good people getting wiped out. And so it's disastrous for humanity every single time. So I want to build, something similar to Bitcoin. And I went to try and build it myself, and I was told, no, you can't do that. It's impossible. Programmers everywhere have tried for years and years and years, so it's not possible. You're never going to be able to figure it out. And so I kind of gave up on it. And back in 2011, I started doing YouTube videos actually back in 2008 after learning about the monetary system. And one of my subscribers said, hey, Davinci, what do you think about Bitcoin? And immediately I said scam, because, you can't solve the double spend problem, which is where you could have a digital asset that can't be copied. So I'm going to read the source code and prove to you that this is a scam. And I did. And I was quite shocked. I was like, oh my God. So my next video was like, every once in a while, something comes along that you buy really, really cheap and be rich one day. This is one of them. And I thought I was going to be the hero to my community, but no, they hated me.
Weren't quite ready. Yeah.
So you nailed it, and they were like, no, you didn't.
No, they thought I was trying to scam them. They thought it was like I lost my mind. Some people actually said that in their videos. There would be several people doing other videos, right, against me, saying, Davinci has lost his mind. I don't know what's wrong with him, right?
Oh, man.
Yes.
Wow. That's pretty early. Yeah.
So did you found yourself like trying to write an implementation, or how far did you get into? So it's interesting to have, there's always, whenever there's a good idea out in the world, it always seems like there's parallel thought. Like there's, maybe 10,000 people all having that thought at the same time. And then trying to get to that implementation, and then someone does in a lot of cases. But it is interesting that you found yourself thinking about that problem and then observing 2008 the same way that Satoshi did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how far were you actively building out the
no
code?
I was actually just grabbing the research and in order to come up with a basis for it, and it was just negative.
Right.
It was just so depressing. I just like forget it. Right. So
you're like, this is insurmountable, and then you literally have the white paper fall onto your desk, and then you're like, oh wow, this is it. And so what happened next when you found this and you shared it with your community and you were kind of like laughed at? Where did you go from there?
Well, first off, I started trying to buy some, right? And it was very difficult because the only place to buy it was Mt. Gox, and I really didn't trust them. Then I started to mine it. I also did this for my community, because I had a gold and silver community. If you go through my videos, it's Davinci J15 is my videos, where you can find my videos on YouTube. and you find all my old videos. They're all up, right? All the people who were back in the days, they've all left. People were laughing at me, and they all took down their videos and stuff like that. I wish I had some of them because they were classic. Oh my god, people would be laughing at them right now. But yes, there was one video which is up there. If you want to look for it, I have like a whole playlist of all my 2011 videos for Bitcoin. And one video I said, hey, listen, I'm so sure about this that if you buy $1,000 worth, that's 1,000 Bitcoin, you will be a multimillionaire. I will guarantee you your $1,000. If it goes to zero, I'll pay you back. Right? Because I had a lot of gold and silver at the time, and I could handle like paying quite a few people back $1,000. So only 5 people took me up on that offer, and three of them, right, really thanked me a lot by giving me 100 Bitcoin, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's a good marketing campaign right there.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Yes.
In
Yes.
2011,
It was 2011.
Yeah.
were we in the the Bitcoin was in the dollars and the pennies?
It wasn't
Yeah.
in the pennies, or
It was a dollar.
yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, incredible. And then so from here you've were you caught up in the whole Mount Gox situation, or you didn't you managed to skirt through that?
Well, I also became famous because I also predicted Mt. Gox was going to collapse. If you go through my videos, you'll find that prediction video where I said, "Hey, stay away from Mt. Gox. It's about to collapse. Right? It's got months before it goes under." So yeah, and it was like I did that in August of 2013 and 2014. It was gone. So yeah, it was an easy one to predict. It just they were bleeding cash everywhere, right? It was clear, and then there was lots of problems with the system. They hadn't upgraded the software, their trading engine, and so forth. It was a disaster, plus tax. So, but the only reason why you wouldn't upgrade your trading engine is because you're bleeding cash, right? You don't have enough cash to hire programmers and so forth to help develop it. So. Yeah, I saw that was happening, and I told people to get out, and only my subscribers, of course, heeded that warning, and they were very happy about that.
Huh. And so what do you find yourself doing in crypto winters these days? So once we have the big cycles, which you've been in all of them, all of the major cycles, and then you've also therefore been around for the less exciting time periods in between, of which arguably we're maybe a year into this current one.
Yes, this one is probably going to be just as bad as the rest of them, just in a different way. These crypto winters are basically because the market gets overextended and collapses. And this one is mostly brought to you by the banking system. Actually, it didn't get overextended enough for it to collapse the way it did. It was actually manipulated down because because we had a double bubble. Those 2 pumps were basically part of the manipulation. Basically, they extended it up, brought it back down with all the different features that they put together in order to help suppress the price. So what did they do? One, they created the commodities exchange. I said that back in 2017, again, another thing that I'm famous for, because I called that. I said, guys, you need to not invest in Bitcoin just a few days before it collapsed, because it's top here near the top, and you don't want to be a buyer here, right? You want to be a seller, and I knew that I didn't mention it on my video. I wanted to say it, but I didn't want. I just felt that maybe I might be wrong, but I don't know why I just didn't say it. But anyways, I said that I was telling people, my friends and family, hey, listen, once the commodities exchange comes out, that's it. Price is coming down, because that's a fundamental event that everybody expects the prices to go higher, and so the opposite is going to happen. And so that's the exact day that it came out was the exact top. And then I also predicted that the next top would be the ETF, which this time I didn't listen. I didn't listen to my own advice, actually. So, because it was an ETF that was backed up by the commodities exchange. And what people don't know about the commodities exchange is that it has nothing to do with Bitcoin. It just tracks the price. And you're like, okay, so it tracks the price. Hold on. Let's take a look at all the other commodities on the commodities exchange. All the other commodities, if you buy a contract there and you hold it to expiry, it's coming to your door. If you buy oil contract and you don't sell it, that oil is showing up at your doorstep, but you better have a place to put it. Right? So, and this is why oil went negative, right? Because there was no place to put oil. And so the only way for you to get rid of that oil contract was to actually pay somebody to take it off your hands.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Got it.
Got it? So
Yeah.
that's how the commodities exchange has worked throughout history. But once Bitcoin comes along, it's a new commodity. Government says it's a commodity. But you can't, with a new contract, if you buy a contract on Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can't, when it expires, you can't get the Bitcoin. You can only get the dollars. So what does that have to do with the price in China? I mean, the tea in China,
Right.
price of tea in China, right? If it's just dollars that you're dealing with, you're just betting against the price.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is trying to match, and somehow they match it with the spot price. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And the reason why they want that is because they don't want, because if they have to buy the commodity in order to pay somebody, that will help cause the price to go higher. So this is why they have it this way. And this is part of the price suppression of Bitcoin. And the other piece is obviously ETF, because the ETF buys the commodities, the contracts, which has no Bitcoin. So people are buying the ETF thinking they have Bitcoin, but they got nothing.
Right. So this is an interesting topic here, because I see this as a fundamental issue in our space, this manipulation and the price suppression and big whales that are able to just move things at their whim as they collectively, move together. Do you see this as just a temporary milestone in the network, and that we move to a point where market cap simply gets so large that it becomes untenable to be able to manipulate the market, and that we're pretty close to that? Or do you think we have a ways to go?
Right now, they're manipulating the market in so many ways, right? And another way that they're manipulating the market is with the lending and borrowing of your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Like, how are they manipulating from lending and borrowing of Bitcoins? Well, when you lend your Bitcoin to these places, you're thinking, okay, well, I'm getting interest, earning interest on my Bitcoin, and like, you need to really think about the concept of interest a little bit, right? It actually, you can grow at an exponential rate, and it can hockey stick up. And there's only 21 million Bitcoin. So if you're getting a high interest rate priced in Bitcoin, you might want to think twice about that, right? Because that could rapidly grow to massive amounts of to numbers that are beyond your belief, right? Because like, just if you take $1 and you 2,000 years ago, let's just say when Jesus Christ was born, and then you had a 2% interest rate compounding monthly, right? That would, today you would have a number so big it would be equal greater than all the atoms in the universe. That's how fast compounding works, right? If you didn't take it out, of course, right?
Right.
You just let it compound. So that's how fast it can go. So imagine if you start with a bigger number than just $1, right? That time frame just shrinks really fast, right? So people don't see that, right? And there's a limited supply. There's no more Bitcoin. So where are they getting these Bitcoin, right? You need to think about that when you get these interests. Now, also, who is borrowing the Bitcoin to pay you this interest, right? Why are they doing it? Are they going to build a business with their Bitcoin? No. That's not going to happen. No, they're going to sell it, right? And buy it back at a cheaper price because that's all they can really do with it.
Right.
Right? So, with that said, right, if that's the case, you're going to have people who actually, wants to borrow against their Bitcoin, and they're going to borrow against their Bitcoin. Maybe they say, okay, well, you know what, I think the price will never go below 70% of a haircut, right, from where I'm buying it. But now you created a liquidity pool for the people who can borrow the Bitcoins to sell down the price so that you get liquidated and they get your Bitcoins to give back to the people who are lending it, who are lending it. So that's how they suppress the price today so far to make Bitcoin all the way come back for the first time ever, come back to lower than its previous all-time high.
And because all of this is all public data on the blockchain, people know where liquidation prices are for buyers. And so it's, there's no reality where we've ever had that before, where what someone's liquidation number is, and everyone knows. It's like, okay, this company, we just got to keep pushing it down and we'll liquidate them. And that's
no, not really. No. That's not on the blockchain. No, that's not on the blockchain. But what is on the blockchain? I mean, if you're talking about Ethereum, and it's the smart contracts, yes. But if you're talking about Bitcoin itself, no, because that's always done in a centralized company. And so, although that's not public information, there's always somebody who's wealthy who goes, can you just, give me that information and I'll just, there you go. You know what I mean? Come on. Right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, that's going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to get that information and be able to, use it to their advantage, whilst other people don't. Now, that's how the market is. It's always been that way. And, it's not going to change until we have a fair monetary system which includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so forth, because now we can have more transparency. Because if we are now doing this through centralized form, yes, we will be decentralized form. We will be able to see more. Everybody will be able to see what people's liquidation price. So, for example, everyone can see that one person has a massive hundreds of millions of dollars of Solana at $20 liquidation.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, right? It's a public information, and that's how it should be, right? And so Solana has tried to come up with solutions, right? Because they were really close to that liquidation price. They've turned up now, but still, they were really close to that, and they were trying to come up with a solution where they would take the person's assets and sell it on OTC, right? Open, not at the actual price, because then it crush Solana if that person tried to sell everything on the decentralized application. So, yeah, that's allowed. That's the way it should be. That's so that everybody has the same information at the same time, and so that people could make their own plans. And that helps. That also helps us traders see what's going to happen in the market, right? Mm-hmm. As well. So, and not be the ones that left out in the dark, going, okay, well, I'm going to have to figure out that, okay, this is what they're doing, right? But no, if you have all of the information, right, publicly available, then yes, you can see it. Right now, you don't have the information of, does somebody know that how much the liquidation price of all the people that are lending their Bitcoins or borrowing against their Bitcoins? You don't know that, right? You don't know if somebody wealthy enough is going to use that against us, because that's not public information.
Mm-hmm. We're in this crypto winter right now, mm-hmm. and historically, what we've seen, the next, catalyst for exiting that has been the Bitcoin halving, and we've been of the idea lately that we think because of the, just the crazy amounts of attention that this space has had in recent years, the advancements that's been happening with blockchains like Ethereum and the, moving to proof of stake, we believe that, as well as ZK rollups and a lot of the other privacy layers that are being added to that, this could set off a lot of this attention and development can set off a faster decoupling from the traditional financial system in terms of adoption and price. And I guess I was curious on your take on that, and then as well if you want to add something to that. But
yeah, sure.
So the audience understands what you're talking about with second layer solutions, right? Basically, second layer solutions are where you have a separate chain altogether that's connected to the previous chain. So, for example, you have your Ethereum address, right? And you want to be able to transact at a lower fee, but using the same address. So you basically offload to another chain with the same address, and then you make transactions, and then it gets posted back to the main chain afterwards. So that's the idea behind the second layer solution. It's basically being able to do more transactions on a higher level than on the main chain.
Right.
Because the main chain, right, is just too congested, or should be used as a settlement layer, so forth, right? So what I think about basically those different second layer chains, I think they should be more centralized, right, with the option of decentralization through okay, well, more of like, it's not decentralization, more of what's called federation. So for example, you can create your own secondary layer. I think every single company should have their own means to create their own secondary layer, and then anyone can see, just like a public blockchain. Anyone can see that. Anyone can create a node, right? But their node is the head node, which means whatever they say really goes, right? But you see everything, right? Everything's available. So if they decide to change the rules of the nodes, you'll still see it, right? But you could either agree with it and stay on their second layer of solution, or go, no, I don't agree, and move your money off. Sort of like when you're working with an exchange, where the exchange, you deposit the bitcoins, but you don't see how many people deposit their bitcoins, particularly, right? You have to do chain analysis for that. You don't see transactions, right? Okay, there's somebody trading between each other. You don't see any of that. So those second layer solutions should be basically allowing for corporations to do that, to allow you to see all of the transactions, so that they're not cheating, they're not trying to no one's skimming anything off of off the system, right? It's all transparent, and they don't have to worry about some other third parties, like somebody internally screwing over everybody, right? Because of the somewhat decentralized nature of it. Somewhat, it's not fully, right? But because it's a node, right? And you can have other people have nodes around that, and then that helps them go, okay, well, you know what? If I need to upgrade the main node, I have to notify all of my other participants. Take some time. It can't be done now, instantly. Right. So it's that somebody goes, okay, I'm going to change this so that I'm going to steal everybody's money. Right?
Master plan. It's the master plan of Polygon.
yeah, with their admin keys. I heard, the admin keys, actually, there's a disturbingly small number of people that can control the Polygon chain. But I guess I probably trust systems a little more than I should sometimes. But I don't find myself being as concerned about the Polygon admin keys as some people. I do find myself thinking about the overall meaning of the layer 2 ecosystem. One, it's very important that we have reasonable solutions to trust assumptions, and in the scalability trilemma. So, and there's you get speed, security, and decentralization. Pick two at the settlement layer. And really, what layer 2s do is they get speed, but by giving up a little bit of decentralization, a little bit of security in some ways. but the reason that it stays reasonable is because it's not a settlement layer and you're confining your risk to a much, much smaller segment of time. And so whatever the block time of the chain is, all your risk, it takes place in that block time in between transitions of that second layer. And so you lose a little bit of security, but not that much, because it's not the settlement layer. The settlement layer has to have security and decentralization in perpetuity, whereas you can take a little bit of a trade-off in decentralization and security for speed, or you might even be able to keep the same security guarantees of the settlement layer, but you give up some decentralization, and in exchange you get speed.
Which is critical for us to be able to get this scaled so that it can actually become a part of the bigger system, right? We need to be able to scale.
Right. And I think one of the big changes for humanity, and one of the points at which this can really become pervasive, that it can be used for, it has to become so good that it's a hands down more effective, more performant system than all of the major payment processors. So whatever the throughput of Visa is, the throughput of the Lightning Network or of ZK Sync or StarkNet has to be better. The interface has to be better, and the speed and marginal cost of a transaction has to be better than major payment networks.
Right.
And at that point,
and an additional point to that is the ease of usability.
Yeah.
People currently in today's world, it's, even explaining Bitcoin, I'm sure you have trouble with individual and people. So going to StarkNet from there, there's a bit of distance that needs to be covered, and then just to be able to even explain it is one thing, but then to be able to bridge over money and actually use this, it's a lot of steps, and this is what one of our friends is there's a long road ahead of user experience that needs to be developed and education that needs to be shared before we can get to a point of mass adoption, really.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. I have to disagree with some of your points there. The real issue of second layer solution is we want speed, right? We reduce security only to the point where governments could actually cause us problems, right? Security is reduced not to the point where individuals can cause problems. It's only if governments can cause problems to that layer, right? And as for these, because of the more centralized nature of it. So, for example, in my federated example, there's one node where the government goes, "Oh, okay, we don't like what's going on over there. We're going to go over and talk to that guy over there, and they're gonna have to do what we say." So that's the problem, right? That's the real issue. Now, as for somebody stealing, individuals doing something wrong, it's close to impossible, right? It's not impossible, it's just close to impossible that we can make it when you're talking about the second layer solutions, right? So that's what the advantage of the second layer solution is. So for example, when you talk about Lightning Network, it's actually more centralized, the way it's designed. Now, of course, you don't have to when you're trading between two people, to your friends, between your friends, it's different, right? But you still have to start off with having some Bitcoin. One person has to start off with having Bitcoin in order to create a channel, right? But if you want to move out from outside of these just two people, you need to connect to a bigger channel, which is basically a centralized hub of all these Bitcoins on that channel. And so the government can go there and say, well, can I have that? And so it's not terrible, because all that's going to happen is, let's just say they want to institute a tax, because they won't outright take something, right? They'll say, okay, well, we want to institute a tax. Well, with that, the little bit of centralization of the Lightning Network, since an institution has to just follow the law, they will increase the transaction fees across their network, but which is the tax,
Right.
right? So and they have to. That's it, right? They will have no choice, right? Unless they want to get shut down. And so that's the problem with the Lightning Network.
And so you see the solution to that being that it just needs to be further developed and more decentralized, but
well, I think in one way I'm also hearing that part of the solution is simply the federation of it. So let's say if one node on that network is exploited in that way, whether a tax is put in place, it probably becomes a ghost town shortly thereafter. Another node is stood up, people move their transactional activity elsewhere.
No, actually, it's the other way. So, for example, the node, what happens is, here's the thing. When we're talking about the different types of, there's several different types of second layer solutions. One, the Bitcoin's Lightning is totally different from, for example, other types of federated nodes, basically, of second layers. So one second layer might have like a top-down approach, basically, but it has to notify all its other nodes before it can make any kind of critical change, right? And because that takes time, right? The government can't go, okay, do that now. Well, I can't. I have to do it next year or a year from now, right? I have, right? So this gives people time to adjust and make other changes, right? That in order to prevent the government from doing that, right? So the software will, and then people will come up with solutions.
Right.
Well, oh, that's what you're going to do? Okay, well, I'm going to come up with a solution to prevent that from happening. That takes even longer, maybe even takes longer for the node to actually change, would be ideal.
So you slow down the upgradability in a way because you have a coordination problem. So in this way, the coordination problems of modifying a network is a huge feature on the second layer and the first.
Yes. That's why Bitcoin is so strong. Let's just say the government says, hey, you know what, developers, you're going to have to change all the nodes here because we don't like the fact that it's 21 million anymore. We need more. Well, first off, right, you have to get the agreement of a whole bunch of people which are not going to agree. Right? So how are we going to do that, right? And they don't live in the same jurisdiction you have control over. So we can't do that. So that's where the federated node, right, has to, if he's got a lot of nodes outside his government jurisdiction, it makes it very difficult for him to make the change, right? Because he can lose these critical nodes that help him transact and could destroy his business. So he's got to come back and say, hey, you know what? I need time to get to, if these people decide not to change, right? I have time to I need time, money, and to come up with new nodes, right? You want to make that as difficult as possible for the government to say, hey, I don't like that. Change it.
And it is really interesting how much time we have to spend in the game theory of decentralized networks. A lot of the effort goes into thinking about the actions and potential knock-on effects of the largest gorilla in the room.
Exactly. But you don't want to go too far, right? Because Bitcoin is too far, right? Because then because it's like, okay, well, we can't have, the reason why they decided to keep the block size the same is because of two reasons. One is that they felt that finding more compression into the blocks would be better because you're not going to gain a whole lot by doubling, tripling, or quadrupling the block size. And two, if there's no hard fork ever in Bitcoin, and we just have a policy of never hard forking, well, then it makes it difficult for governments to make a change, which is a hard fork, which changes the number of Bitcoins. This is a hard fork because it's never been done before. Right? You can say, well, it has been done. Bitcoin Cash. Yes, not successfully.
Right.
Yeah, so this is important, and not only is it important in the sense that, hey, you know what, the block size makes it easier, because what happens in Moore's law is always going on, is always going continuing, right? We're doubling our speed in computers
Mhm.
every 18 months. We're doubling the size of hard drives every 18 months. So eventually, we're going to have somebody with a phone with a terabyte on it, and we'll be like, "Oh, you poor thing, you got nothing. You got barely any space on that thing."
Mhm.
Because I've got like 200 terabytes on mine, which is plenty to hold the whole blockchain of Bitcoin, and it'll never supersede that phone,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because it's limited in size growth every year. You know that it'll never supersede the size of the phone. So now you can have blocks not only in the phone for individuals, I mean, so nodes for individuals, but also you can have it in embedded systems. In systems that, what is an embedded system? Well, systems that are hard coded in the CPU, all the code and everything to run Bitcoin. And this is done all the time. For example, I'm sure you have a router somewhere in there, right? You know what a router is?
Yep.
A router has embedded TCP/IP, right? And this is why TCP/IP is resistant to upgrade, because everybody has embedded systems. It's
Mm.
been ossified, right? And everybody has embedded systems with TCP/IP in it. And it's not the best. It was never the best protocol. It was just the one that won out. Just like beta VHS back in the days. If I know I've dated myself, but but yes, you know, VHS was not the best. It was the beta, but the Betamax, but it won out because of marketing and so forth. Well, now that TCP/IP won out, it can't change, right? Same that's with Bitcoin's trying to get to that level too, where it's just TCP/IP. It's embedded systems. How are you going to go up to a bunch of satellites and change all this hardware that we have the Bitcoin standard running on it? Because hey, it doesn't matter which version of Bitcoin you started off, it still works today. If you still use the first version of Bitcoin, you can send and receive Bitcoins no problem.
Mm.
Hmm.
I have an interesting question here. So this is something that we've talked about. Like, is a law of marketing when you have new entrants coming into a new space. It's always number one and number two that own everything. It's Coke and Pepsi, and then everyone else is fighting for a sliver of what's left, right? And for this particular space, it seems that it's obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has a lot of interesting differences from Bitcoin, and part of the things that you're mentioning which make it so different, and that is that Ethereum has had hard forks. It has had all of these upgrades, and it's just kind of like building the train as it's on the rails, right? And so, what are some of the interesting challenges that we'll face with that blockchain as we move forward to this? Do you feel that it's going to be a that it's going to come under more scrutiny from the governments than something like Bitcoin will?
Yes, the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum is that Ethereum, government can point a gun and say, "Hey, I don't like that transaction, change it." And because they do send out upgrades periodically, it can be done, right? Everybody has to upgrade, and it goes, and that's that, right? Whether or not people will upgrade is a different story, right? But it's easier to have happen, right, than it would be, Bitcoin, because Bitcoin does not do any upgrades, hard fork upgrades.
Mhm.
So this is the reason why Ethereum can't run on proof of work, because proof of work prevents um, going back and changing the transactions. But without the fact that you're not doing any upgrades, right? There's no point in proof of work. If you're doing upgrades, there's really no point in proof of work. And this is why they're dumping proof of work and Ethereum, because they've already proven that they can go, yeah, we're going to roll back that transaction way back there. You can't do that with Bitcoin. Even if, let's just pretend you just said, okay, let's not change the protocol, but let's go find a different way to roll back the transaction. Well, it's not possible in a sense, because if you just try to go after the miners to say, hey, you roll back these protocols, these transactions, they have to go back in time, start at a block that's lower, and try to catch up, right? Whilst everybody's going forward. That's not going to happen, right? And the person, let's just say the thief, can also just pay a higher mining fee to those who follow the real blockchain, right? So, I mean, obviously they're going to take that money, right? So there's just any game theory you try to throw against Bitcoin, after assuming that you don't change the you don't do a hard fork, there's just no way you're going to be able to make a change to the past. Just not going to happen. And so that's the advantage. Whilst with Ethereum, you can make a change to the past, even though they're on proof of work. So what's the point of having it? That's why they're moving to proof of stake.
And then with the Ethereum ecosystem, I suppose a lot of and that's where I spend a lot of my time. The general supposition I feel like is that that there's a fairly strong game theory behind the proof of stake system, and part of what we get in exchange for the greater flexibility in the ecosystem is we get this much more colorful palette of potential applications, the ability to just express a wider range of things and turn very serious things into an experimental science, so that we can learn new principles about how monetary policy can work, about how multi-signature or voting systems can work. And in my crazier thought experiments, you get into turning legislature and governance itself into an experimental science to sort of derive the next generation of government. Because before the printing press, that was our highest level of communication, and all systems were basically authoritarian. After the printing press, with that lateral communication in society, it took a couple hundred years, but civilization eventually re-optimized toward republics, and then republics got the best economic output and results from humanity. And then now we have the internet, and it's only been 30 years, 40 years. Arguably, we have not yet adjusted to that. And I think social media networks actually put that stress, that communication stress, on display, where we can see that our words, before the internet, a bunch of people might have had something bad to say about the outcomes of a political system. But what maybe protected that political system was that maybe these people at the ground floor of humanity weren't sure if their words were being heard by the people at the top. So it probably keeps a level of protest or a level of discontent down. But when you're on Twitter and you see a major politician getting what's the word, that getting ratioed on Twitter, and you know for a fact that politician read that very pointed response to whatever they said or did, and then we don't see reciprocal changes, we don't see an accountability or responsiveness, it shows that maybe our legislative system isn't optimized, and maybe we do need something that's more like a Wikipedia.
What do you mean, maybe? It's not.
Oh yeah, it's not optimized at all. But I basically think that what's coming is some version of Wikipedia, but for legal code. So if you are part of a civilization and you don't like how something works, whether it's something as trivial as the parking laws outside on the street outside your house, to whatever your opinion is on capital punishment, you should be able to propose the rule change, and whether or not it goes through or not, you should be allowed to formally start the proposal process and have the right for your interest to be heard, start the discussion process, and have it bubble up to be the law of the land if it turns out to be the most upvoted or the best solution. And but I say all that to say that I agree. I think Bitcoin serves an amazing purpose in this ecosystem for pursuing ossification and unchanging rule set, and staying intentionally intentionally disagreeable in a way. They're intentionally disagreeable on a number of important dimensions. And then the Ethereum ecosystem walks back on a couple of those trade-offs in exchange for giving us the experimental science realm of the space. Because I think there's huge gains. Yeah. So whether or not it's taking outsized risks, I think is one thing, but I feel like whether or not it's delivering very interesting mechanisms and value, and it's going to allow us to find experimentally, because we can't always derive the best systems through theory. A lot of times we just have to try it, interact with other people, and see what works and what doesn't, and allow the survival of the fittest of technology to take place. But yeah, I do feel like I find myself trying to imagine the whole picture more and more these days, where you have sort of the flag bearer of standardization and ossification, and basically a war ready machine, and right. then you have Ethereum. By definition, is almost just more optimistic in certain ways. It's basically saying that, like, hey, let's get to where we can create systems that give people this vision of the future that's going to make it an obvious choice to let go of the bullshit that's been frustrating us for time immemorial.
Yeah, but you know what, that has been a problem. Governments have always turned tyrannical, and because they just ossify, right? For example, how there is no such thing as a temporary government bureau, right? It just doesn't happen, right? There's no such thing as a temporary government law. This doesn't happen, right? I mean, sometimes, but very few, right? So we just build laws on top of laws on top of laws until it just becomes a disaster, right? And it's only with a collapse and a redesign does the things actually change, and that's unfortunate, right? Right, that has to go through that. We have to go through that, and it's just the way it is, right? We've seen it time and time again through our human history. We have to see an empire collapse before we see something new come into place, right? Something new and better, and because the system is geared to keep things the same, right? If you try to go there because you really feel that you can make a difference, you're gonna find that you are the one that changes, not the system.
Love it.
I agree.
DJ, this was amazingly fun. It's we're running up on an hour. I want to make sure I respect your time, and this was awesome, man. I really appreciate the conversation. I know Ryan does, and we should definitely do it again sometime soon.
Sure, anytime.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, man.
All right. Thank you very much. Cheers.